Ma'di isu ini nai ane buni temangbi.
Ma'di di jo du iya mai soya jo molo jo kalca di bakondrea di lukurope amari ini ogose iko dira ata vuko wia witotori sang babakata di dombe yera vuko li na kite oke pada community sako jo opero ba mari ba Ma'di roni rubangote vuongo ni kia bia benine de aniga padre tikungwa setani kitani setani ko jo Ma'di ko setani radi endria ila kake iba iko diwa.
If you go to the village today, you might find that those families who used to be known for rainmaking, not even one of their sons is a rainmaker today.
In Africa, rainmaking tradition was a common practice, particularly in communities that suffered frequent droughts. In such communities, the person of a rainmaker was respected as he claimed to have authority to bring about rainfall when the rains failed to come in season. The Ma'di belonged to the Moro Ma'di language group found in Uganda, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. They are among communities which had instituted the office of a rainmaker among their revered hereditary chiefs. The Ma'di are predominantly a riverine community, and they engage in the economic activities of farming, cattle keeping, and fishing. These are activities that require balanced weather conditions in terms of rainfall and sunshine. The offices of the chiefs in Ma'di include Opivu, Ovudipi, who cleansed and purified the land to make it habitable for both humans and animals. Opieri performed functions associated with the health of a community, as the Ma'di believed sicknesses came about partly because of being exposed to bad air. Opechukwa was among those who handled the body of the paramount chief when he died. He cut and guarded the chief's nails during burial rituals. Often the secular and the religious roles were combined in these persons. The rainmaker, referred to as Opiei, was one of the hereditary offices in the hierarchy of chiefs under the paramount chief.
Suru angbu'a a jai piti dia jai ne dia bang bingbiri kwera enera de bazia nyoro ti a yoko ti a agobi ti a wiro ti a wiro ne amala ne amba ni tedi jai adukui oti wiro ne ne e di anzo e won bimbi asiasi
Amasuru seda mungo arenga pi paforu. Bavu angole arenga pi paforu di onto duduk badan songole area duduk badi piruk badi rasa mai. Ei amari de eda otiti otia izangwa tro. Zangwa na runa ei kamu se. Oti ei di oniehwe de oti fo encore voir ngo ba zangwa a ile zu Ma'di ei di tidire ana rumi lo wirai ei ore na ta tina ile na isu ba gangwa na ni di Ma'di ontok baru da ka kolwet na ani ka chi turu e beko no ontok porok bara na ta kwa kare sigesa zo vi bai rata etro ojo joi ko di kare de kan tora zo e fanyera anyera akpe ine ko di fuara zo fa isi sa tsana tang kwa de ni e no se ke ra di ole kwa kala ka kwa ra ha tu zana ya ngala kara ongara ko anga ka yare isi na tane ko cho kere ara
Jora di yodara kabe Ma'di sidi ogogo iare
ei sokane kamula gati ka tsangwa ei kwelo re gana la gani tene kakitia so odene suru amadri etero suru pamu jodire tra o pie ne sukare meto amadina se Ma'di pamu jogore mujoni dionga zale dia o zie hwetro ombe motsua para ni tinga so kwa metudire yojo kede urudria kodi fane gajuro pikerentu
opi iti dimbi voa isuka ni okpa tunyo pi iti nye kare nyoluto orute adrato sile na batia niri nye bera iyo diko te ofisi kanya yule kwetri ladi arasa matambari amalazuno ko kursi pake ko gua pisi rasa mardia subete lendala rami dua wa
i okwe ina Ma'di na ni kanu di ba ni kate Ma'di sikate ja kakpe ta ya dere ware opididi opididi le ada fua
rainmakers they passed on this information and knowledge from father to son. And from father to son, because it was a way of getting money and also earning a living. It is a very lucrative way of earning a living. Imagine that you can even within about 12 hours tell somebody that what will happen in 12 hours time about rain during a drought. This will be very, very important. I will tell you what the ordinary fellows in the villages think about rain. They believe that rain is brought if they please the gods. This is the traditional way. That if they please the gods, the rain is bound to come in each season. They are bound to have their good harvests, and they are bound to have food in plenty. That's the general belief. There is also a belief that somebody using powers, superhuman powers, can create rain when and wherever he wants. One of the most popular stories that you have always heard was that some people have sent lightning to kill off their enemies or to destroy property of their enemies. This, they believe, can be done.
Narratives about individual rainmakers and their exploits are still fresh in the memories of the elderly members of the community.
e biko soane. Ha vo trape is together the battle, this would not say to Cordani. What trape de ba, you do along it, young Poganti. You do along it, young Poganti. Cats are pretty because you are happy. Marima Vola. Ayatico. A piece the other you take the Tarera, a very pea. The being dropping la vitae, Pascal. Dra, would you any open it more often I gone, Tangy. Alas, Carico. Of okay, of waited a pinotore. If you got to into Enna, or your Pascal Mercats at Daroca to the Gara, it's a gassiber. Hope you as a car and you didn't tell a guy. Oh, yeah, as a car way red like a caevo. I quite they be the odds, Ramani, Ganga Oditra. Drang about the Avudisatra. Avudica, the Alexander or Corona, Rosa, Sera. Bencetari, Ossi. He did, who eat your swamwa, or your pin waffle. So, who was I had to get it? He had a room work. You do young way, pretending or pit up by Baru, or Prizoka. If you Sarande, Abia Maria Balare de it's your pin a cold toe, you blow current blue. Core, Marivu, Pemadesa Frupa. As if blue yet any with Madame Mamma Ada could do. So you could get a foco. La vita down, Taniani. The Silo could do a penny day. Da, what when animal Musura sounds a pay or Musura Quaffordra.
The rainmaker was both feared and respected because of the powers he wielded.
In Roku, ba kaita darosa, ba ki cooperative la foka dako. Ojo, en robako ya arriva so adidri nana. O ya right there na used to say baka in really baka right there adoma. Robo, zobako tare sore. Ko ba ti sei ko di kian rek ka na idira. Barata bela rekola ba konyata. Baka tanyao. E buida ka konga.
Okuru andani eze bazi batiti kwe temaria. Kendri morizi mbi opioka enira overuba opie iti debati ade joani yikweto. Kavo soni. Jo ituko ka ya viko ka engoni sa ade vudiro de joyi ibe hiko di amani ade ania i. Valu kurujo kana ado taidea we akojo ike ko di oduditi afuke ike akedara ina koko kalo kudu ede ko dira de ja eko ene riko poki andre ese lu kuru karite isi oko ebe ba ina ade a ero kwase ade jo ade le de ma di iko tore ko lo roani ko le kabani tuka ejiwa kalo kuru ride na inga
I was forecasting in Nairobi at one time in the East African Meteorological Department. And our lecturer then, Findleta, told us something very interesting. That one day he had gone to do his research in the field. Then he found a herdsman. And the herdsman was running very fast towards Gerisa with his goats and sheep. And he asked the herdsman, why are you running? And because he knew a little bit of Swahili. And the herdsman said, Mheshimiwa, run. Run also because it's going to rain very heavily. And in this area, if it rains very heavily, you will not be able to get out even with your Land Rover. Findilata did not question the herdsman, why he was, how he knew it was going to rain. But he also understood that there might have been a reason behind what the herdsman said. So he gathered his equipment and went back to Gerisa. And before he got to Gerisa, it started really raining. And the rain was the greatest amount they had received in Gerisa in the last few years. There was no crowd. There was nothing. So he looked at all the meteorological measurements that could be made scientifically, and he discovered that the Gerisa dew point temperature, whenever it was 23 or above, it was bound to rain.
Ritual items and actions accompanied the words the rainmaker uttered.
Osokane kesua itu ya fokoka. Zora itu koka arvadi bilu mari zivie ko ali kidi. Di pia ko bilu ko ini. Araja arvadi ba kidorga ade nya jasi. Ade ili bemperu arena de la canera. Tijangwa biliti voa chope angwa briti na ungwa la tatang ya ta tuliti kia chope amarungwa chope dazona ne ade ine edua erwatro herona runungwa avu ade osa ara totro ade ine arunu jause na trendro ole obu bale zona ne obu ko di bakonya za meritiri sa ke bisa la taretaro denera and on your penai, near like it is there. I have what I dress assay. I have what I dress assay. Esa. There's a taradina, I have said baru, bampa, and Anyani, eat to river kiddy. I don't wear. Voaba, and you barusa and pampa, the kiddy. I am ompa, Tanaka de Baconya, swear Saraba. If he says Sato, I don't say Sato. Hanya na ziada vadi iya itu, asa ziada bakade, ada jaguar vadi badak idori, boleh iya rin naik gana. Bana lah kanya karya puruko, jadi di iya rin iyo, ni ala kana nyakpe, jadi di iya ni ala kana nyawa, ikut di. Đã giấy bỏ bố của đi bộ giấy bỏ bố của đi lên thì ở đây mình cả dân cả nhà đấy của đi có tỏ.
Le fauna c'est là zo la kiuzura vonia onzi oriam vuare kare tsandi opi ni mabani e iko di ere ko wavutine ere e ikede lo kuko dira de sei madina iko sele miadri eruna sere lo kuko di
kisah nasi dari tanah itu lu nari ba iko don teu dun ngang bera te sonu ziko sisi anyi tite se ika nyira pisau
ya do tanah itu yani sa ko te rubu ko lu dia yo sa ko kangwa ru ni ndrang ba dia do dia ke iki do di ni kala
The community believed in the power of the rainmakers' intentional prayer to invoke God and the ancestors on their behalf.
Bakevo ne jo ya ituko kadene bakevo de opini ikwe nane kayaka amala adwa warisi kudoa na ekaru atri amaladaba ojo kojo hiyo diko derika adose ismeache bakongo kation onze abidi aninga tidi baka de wo try ngajo inini eze bakonga opidi bana kata na yo kaya ya tine wa mbesa na ivu odu baro trazo ojopia ungwe zone na mbese iko ko dira
ovia ya tanze domani riga ewo joko dieri ko lo okposi kurere ifa kweziti gboro ndele nani nai ade ya bitsa kakivo agana umbea kana eri nai izuki anisa.
The rainmakers have an impact in the society. And the society strongly believe in them because of some evidence here and there. Whether what they do is true or not, and it coincides, but it has created that commitment that a rainmaker is an authority. Now, when the rainmaker acts, he acts on behalf of the community and addresses the needs of the community to God.
The chief may also initiate the process when he notices the adverse weather conditions.
Kana eka opi robangana ikode karakwako oko jo baka chandi esudi na dose ikole kodi
ideka adingo adi ine adi ekoa abutoro kesu area madriga korea adi ya mawade senia ma taiteto antori zea oko aka ine se we saini agarisi odko ya soa tubjona aga kana rui kuyana sa wa to sinane obani tubjona aga ine se tia soa arunane to ay konyi laka ni gbani atidoru ine kore iya ine were adi ni diklosawa.
In the days of Elijah, God told him to say, there will be no rain or dew in Israel except by his word. And then when it came to raining, after the 3 years drought, Elijah told his servant to go and look towards the lake and see if he can observe. Until the servant came back and said, I saw a small cloud rising from the lake as if it's a hand going up. This is after he had prayed intensively to God for the rain to come. And it happened. So there could be divine intervention. We already know that there is always a divine intervention from the days of Noah, when God brought continuous rain and flooded everything. But then God promised that he will never bring back rain. And then Jesus himself said in Luke 12, he says, if you see a wind coming from the east, you immediately say there will be a heat wave. And if you see it coming from the west, you say it's going to rain, and rain it does. You who can foretell the weather, how can you not see this one? Now, what Jesus was saying is, to the west of Israel, actually, is the Mediterranean Sea. So any winds coming from the Mediterranean Sea are bringing what? Moisture inland. And so they are likely to create rain. And to the east is the Arabian desert. So any winds coming from the east are bound to bring hot conditions. And people know this. So if you know also the direction of the wind which is prevailing at any given time, you can actually say what is likely to happen in a situation.
There could be powers which cannot be explained scientifically, where you need God's intervention for you to create rainfall.
Si andra mata kata deite girdi so kite nani tani ingwenkwe so hiyo diko ada yang banyak hiyo kran sana si iko diwe iko dianci ini dijo ado irina majote dia hanya tatonana tia totieru Raja hiyo diko anyinya nyimadio pie irina nyanyi tionze anyinya member sinitatu anyinya tionze so nyonze tira ru ama abi den risi ini ngwe kido dika kudi.
There were claims that some Ma'di chiefs did not need the rainstones to make rainfall. All they did was to declare a day of fast, gather at their ancestral ritual sites, and invoke God and their ancestors. Then it was expected to rain that very day. After the ritual, The rainmaker and his assistants walked from the shrine without looking back, lest it would rain on them on the way. The belief was that the quantity of water poured in the pot determined how much it would rain, and that how the rainmaker turned and tilted the stones in his hands would also regulate the weather conditions in this process.
Oni ikweri tile anai ani guru kicho yetsoa ile ko bare o muto yetsoa dene ta aruna kare chorubu ani inni zisa zo ile nya amira mari zita ngene tonse ile tuka bale yetsoa dene kare choinkwe naina dai tukoka narai tukoka are vale vanyunkwe nya mi adose ojo ma mi ade tema ta deni are kama ni dai mune ka moringiri nya kala ka na le ko na ko hwa ko chora ngbe ike ni ko di.
The Ma'di also believed that the leaves of a plant called erewa had the ability to attract rain. The rainmaker would pluck the leaf of this plant that thrives around water bodies, smear it with red ochre, and briefly expose it in the sun. It was believed to instantaneously attract rain. The Ma'di have names for the different types of rainfall. The rain mediated by the rainmaker at the request of the community was expected to be long and gentle.
Easy could be buru kina edinzari ki de leta ko adro na ungwa menzikwa kede onre kodini asira so leonya kongera kede onre kodini asira bena ungwa obo ngokengwe mepelere ngbe onya sakonga ngbe tro onya ngari na dile ni konga onya dile rirena onya dile ngari atito na handre konga nzane sabakoza onya ritori api konga dasa ini daziasi danya na zori oto ngwe bori na kesore ino dianda yalele ya buto kelondro onya gbogboru na bori ikonga iri biako bohweli ngwe
eitionze zonai longo azoriga madiziri ojo gule dreams hwako dine mondule bubuare nkani mule opia limu ik odegoni drive ko gwe paraya minzi hwani eididi tsetse para kokoko kwivuru nzorore didi nani naina evololo nyamvu areko kidzo didi sitore ka ta evolo ka oribingba seritiane de karivolo wa voa tabi bongo ne de zoko evolo biane palanda ere kambisa wa
mudo na ita sama nyukana ni ya ni avuna ina avuna ni kwadrie rangi tutodi ni yang ni na kana ya na silaka ya fu silini ni sia su amala ko ti ya zato itala tu kurisi ni sia isu ni bara ni kede na omo da sa na ni ba le ko tasari ituri ini ni atanian da vai le ko di ko tasara Although
all narratives agree about the functions and roles of a rainmaker, there is no master narrative about the origin and details of the practice of rainmaking in the various chieftaincies in Ma'di.
Kenga bu itro wa jo sura eji opidri da jo pi ejira opi oni kare anata ni mbare rene ko ka particular Ma'di itambadi na dri an mala Ma'di sudi aresa ke duerere jor ke jo pidi amala tambak pe nyata ni mbare nyiri joge ilo vika kanya toni mbara ko dua ko jiape tananiri taenga de bangari very powerful bien rosa kede bake suwa kidra toro lemi jomonru bingo ne ane kai jiape pirawo odu dia do pe we ka very wiki se bazi tike suta kania che ko jia sitiga entera very valuable wa ba kondua tonti kunzele sa
Taleri da na pe to karibua ni kuriauba liso.
The principal instrument for rainmaking was the rainstones. These are smooth, white, almost transparent and cylindrical in shape.
Tana oni ani kiko suani tu. Ni jo amira ani nan. Kosanyi ndranyi jo arune ye ani kivwe iko oni.
Oni ne ingwe ani di nyembade ni anakaya mukurubuane katiba aruna kizeri nikoni bwe atani dia dogaza bwe tane nani
dilena ile njwa ado osu ekwe dia dilena ani itegesi totokwa lo ekpa ki dilena na kwa lo ile nani dovu inka ina kodi Yesu ata ina tubizo na aga kake umbodi ndi mere agasa kake umbo njwa taliti riani tubizo na agasi.
The potent rainstones were not kept inside houses, but under shady trees and in designated clay pots.
Ade kudoide adodu ko gwederari tulungwe te mari di era ziti ubadore sa ovia ne maria ane na joy deni ade ngwade karesu choita ne mbajo kolovo pelergade tane mbadi tiane bache ra tia sa bade ni cheda e kende diresa ra ena oya we oyareko.
For the stones to be effective, they had to be well taken care of. They were constantly kept wet with little amount of water in the clay pot, and they were routinely smeared with special oils. If this was not done, there were claims the stones would jump about in the pot.
Wajo ini tani mbako te wanya ini kaunirua ismeado singone ziakengwe amala ana adone anolo kanya ikose ente mujwa ya bore pinaka o safari ya to igore ya kigo kengwe back
ni kweli atanimba atazo te madupia jule usira ni nai kite yo tamba ngona ni koroke ali tamba tuluangwazi tulua ni pelere ali biatema tanatane mbazo ki ali aru iluche jei akoka ke onvo alo kitana yako kayufe yole tadi wesu asiamvu asikosengo na akose kwena kufe ni nana kesua ombatani andako zo ali tani mbanda anda tara opiria lekeranere ufeko kalwa irina aka eritoi.
The rain chief was an exclusive custodian of the rainstones. Whoever found them informed the chief, who ensured that it was brought to the rainmaker.
Talivia tania de mba adu tipi juang kwa madene rio biariti ani ada ai bakaya lo aruna jako joga alu lihat transfer ke madene ti a usia iri kalau kangwa na mana kasih dulu ni ana kaya lo irina jo indera boka ere itu kok ere itu kanyang yang ni mula kana nyara dulu itu nyawa dulu itu nya ya rubi ya avulisi avulani dia dunia ya rulinya ya ruliause tanya ibu itu kali dia itu kerupiah ngona yukaro mbak ngola ke hike dara.
very few people in the community have had direct contact with the rainstones.
Amasa Ameria taizorega ya mani taizorega kindrele misi da bieta makiani ditirisa ikweru barune ingoni ani andre koro
Talele masame surega da masama bitikite amala kwa masama mari utitise ongo jura tale tatili tili ya defia yepe adungwa utitona ndari biaro banga ani kwa radi ya adi
drienru de ko ini kakitiano de ingoni ani mata yo drierunza pe onse taliri
amenga soko amemu inge iya infungba mandra to de ne mezito ame ko madise ke awose ko yo de ne anga je fere mudi iso ase uzi odara.
None of the participants from the families of the rainmakers that we interacted with could confess to having been initiated in the practice. They gave many reasons for this.
Magpane rekba tiru tamana oma makoro amalako ma dara udu siba andra ne majule pika ini ne ane analo kamalo kane to se tani terka amare aneto tari ko adin bangpa sanjero are bati putti
eri to andra mata ki dari sa on de aniri on de manera ki da sana fi isuari ebuna ekoro.
Although all Ma'di rainmakers were men, women had a significant part to play in the rainmaking process.
Ka wane gani odeda ina ruvudo
Ma'di ina osode na izi aloa pidi lelendro na adi ba ke ina osone opiko jo lakani tuluna ya ndo jole iko dira ipele du kwa tuluna ya ngesendo iko dira
opinzonzi kolo piro kwe okuyo totally okudi jo ino luna okudi irike ote konyere no isira du agoa taidejo na sikizi no sikolo pizza bata karega kede queen tirende madidri yo ane dianiri oyo lure sa kwanda kasai.
While the rainmaker was sought in case of drought, women, especially firstborn females, were believed to have the power to avert impending rainfall when they needed sunshine to dry their foodstuffs.
Ejo tazikari degia no sebaka etuburu nya kusade omadizi sere iyo kole ani ko di ade zonjamba ngwe de kokoki kobi ko wakitati kungwe ki babugari ni ko take ina tini ke ko di sazi si sana si tabalandrana kokopa ina odrea dire valo kuru jonane ina ese erike che okodru kokoke ina tini da andrese tariba tikari deba ka iya Kiyo di sitaribati Maria ni karidea neko.
The rainmaker shared the characteristics required of all Ma'di chiefs.
Opio di bako, opio kwebo susesako, eso arera nyopi na ina gangwe. Amala opi ni didi, anidri kole kideo ya batoko. Wo opi ni kede bako, wo opi ni kodu bazi iziko. Opini ko ama dizineta erere okwasiko de lakia ta kole opini ru opini sa kolwenzi tori yo adria rurare wo opini koluleko nyinya ko andiri koleko ketap abala bake invudrier ani publicly de talaki jo esu opini ru are ane de bak oleko wajo ane de kazo ide adenere ade opidria ruimba di jo esule tazitiro le de unzi di jole jola kare oje pakore drea adi je de nyopini komba di
jo obesi nyima di isuri na ole nyini uguko ole sako obviously battery deka nyanya sa ana ole ko
mà đi bơi qua alo đi bao giờ sao à ở trong thủ đi có để giờ mình đi qua đấy anh nói con này nghe nó sắc cái đó mà đi bơi ra năn là như thế họ phải có cái giác cái còn tao.
He was also a sensitive individual with a strong sense of connection with the cosmic elements, which enabled him to accurately read the weather conditions.
They
were able to explain to the community the weather condition because they try to understand it. Being sensitive to the weather, creating a relationship with the weather. You know, I remember one time, even a priest, an Italian priest, called by the names of Del Giacomo. He started sneezing and he said, "No, I think the way I'm feeling is as if it's going to rain today." And indeed in the afternoon it rained. But you could see that how he sensed it. So those kind of ways should not also be undermined or overlooked.
Humidity can be felt on the skin. Some people have sensitive skins, and so they can know that it is possible, it's likely that the humidity is very high in the atmosphere. In China, it is observed that there is a certain plant which does not flower unless it's going to rain. Summer has come and it's going to rain. Now this also is an omen which tells rain. In Uganda here, I hear in the West, a great friend of mine who was a commissioner of meteorology here, Mr. Stephen Magaz, said that when there are a lot of gadflies in the animal crowds, then it's likely to rain. And some people say some flowers don't, some plants don't open until they are going. And even in the East there, I've seen people observing a certain bird, that when it starts to sing, then it's going to rain. But these also are indications that these behavior patterns are a consequence of a response to the humidity in the atmosphere, even if there might be no observed clouds at that time.
The community followed strict code of conduct when heavy rainfall breaks the spell of drought. No one was expected to go to the garden on that day. In respect for earth, it was left to soak in the rainwaters for a day or two before the community could begin cultivating their fields. In appreciation, the rain chief was the first to be rewarded with baskets of white ants, other foodstuffs, and services.
Onya na onga zura, onga pelere, onga rindikeni aniko, ade opitolu didi, ade aya irisa ade tara, onya onga tui kolo opini, osa onya. Onya di adi katini adwani katini ani ba, atadi bakuli, tonya zona ani nasindure, ade bao, ade ati la kirisi, ade onya na esa, edzi opidi. Opi sakako baweo. Adi iya di kare ba ada na batini ada zona a kaya esa yendrika wewe tututu dieruka nya amala tari kwa mani andaga rodiani ko abiri ko lubani yo eri ansa jodo kwesa okatoi ino dido kwe okatoi ado kwe na dinesa ansa dazia opidi kon okaka osoa ado ni yole kidori na bati dise kosoa kodiro bane lo soba konyaruta te diani seriso nyuku jora impa diane si ani ado soa deri ado serine so nyuko dokwesa jotu ne kokatu duka na so drako okengwe mbanya godo sako kapelere fuli sako apelere nandesi adi opinera zoera opinini opinadera tanya kasi kwa dera adi goli solaka overo da zemba tu derti adi ambu so ambu na do sora ko nwa adi kwa di so adi do kwefidro do kwenana adi muya opi akoni ani ero iria si alo ero madi ala rudi ero a do kwekolo anyu kolo fuli kolo opi osotako la kikata so pini
wo jolonya amvuare cara iri adisa adi opini kaya amalana isu kasi bori geni opirudra kaki isu si ada ilonya trani mangasi madrien zireresa mi long benrelea o eyonera desi drale uduti.
The Ma'di had a unique democracy. Because it was the community that invested the rainmaker with power, the members came hard against him when he failed to make rain in response to their reasonable demand. If he was perceived to have sabotaged rainfall, the penalty was even tougher.
Laki koke wopidri opi eyo di kwado se dale ma dide ko lenze to nyunkwe uzia jo wesu ane oyakaba ipanisi le andare seko ade swale utubu wale ijuko nya na mamusu diaru oji umbele nzako ke ani adoko adi le fudri gambo adi yo yiswelani da kiswe lufu iko efo ko nya idala yebe na mamusu ole vice ole taziti kusabaka ni dadase dia ni da jode ni de anyita nya anye meden ko ni amalaziti ti la kayo baziti tatore ko da na we onse ole roko
kare deni meri va korba amala nyegbani ya tidorure nya akole ke ikongo ko diko lo ki voa ngube ni tro nyegbani fa ile ni sotambu dai iko diko nya akeme voa ni atani fa ni pani fitronane tanana ni dera gba ani emika nyadone kemi pe anduna nya akemi ni kesu amadina edenye ni taunzi ni sanya ndelo unzi na fi nya akemi kinyangonya ziyara
oja odroba sudane diri amesu opinari olokia yo pini genirega jeyo di koere ade ba opikori itudri itu ikaba voniri ko vo orikosoa langbana ane na sizitisi ikapa kokoko dira
Sisi iko mvuba. Zeyo mvupi bakasi kaza hiya dikakusi. Bakuzu. Tasa berugaru ligido kama lufudira hiya dikakusi. Kajuri soto na kiko. Kilo sora zini. Isanyo pisa nyezito. Anso.
Is there a meeting point between science and the rainmaking tradition?
Tanake ndremani. Especially bakoni na rore. By geni se. Rupani tapiresa andra ni kaba andra ni ukuria tieri nainga rupa kaba ni tieri.
Scientifically, I don't think it is possible for a stone to produce this amount of energy to create rainfall.
The question of somebody using magic to create rain Well, we cannot disbelieve it. If we disbelieve that, then it is very difficult for us to accept that somebody can create rain if the conditions are not conducive for that rain to occur.
The only way you can create rain is if you can induce, they call it cloud seeding. They induce chemicals in the cloud. So they send planes up in the cloud, they put some chemicals, and these chemicals change the properties of the clouds. The rain forms from a cloud. Once you have a cloud, there are droplets within the cloud. When they are heavy enough, they will drop out of the cloud. And when they drop out of the cloud, depending on where you are, now like for us in the tropics, because the temperatures are relatively warm, by the time these droplets reach the ground, they will have melted. They will no longer be those heavy droplets that formed in the clouds, and then we get rain.
The most important thing that God has given us here is the seasonality of this rain. Where the sun is directly overhead, it's heated, and so air is bound to rise. So air is bound to come from all directions to come and address this vacuum, because nature doesn't like vacuums. We find that the position of the sun determines the seasonality. For example, we talk about rains here in Uganda from March to May. Why? Because that's when the sun is apparently directly overhead our region in our latitudes. And we then talk about a second season of the rains from September to end of November. The reason for this is when the sun apparently is in our region, apparently moving southward. And in fact, it is the main reason why climatologists for a very long time, meteorologists, did not appreciate the idea of climate change, because this migration of the sun northwards and has never changed its dates. It is always at above the equator, March 21 and September 23. And it cannot change and come and be above the equator on a different day. Therefore, it is difficult to change the seasons. However, these people started appreciating the idea of climate change and climate variability after they realized that actually man's own actions have influenced changes in the level of temperatures, which actually control the expansion and contraction of the winds, which carry this moisture. And because of this change in temperatures, the temperature patterns have changed.
Bazitia majoa ini aiperuna anraeze sa andreonikuru kaira sinama edejo aise zaka oleko urudugaka oleko.
The rainmaking art has become a thing of the past among the Ma'di.
If you go to the village today, you might find that those families who used to be known for rainmaking, not even one of their sons is a rainmaker today. And if you ask them to produce the items that were being used by their forefather, who was a rainmaker, they will not be even able to produce.
Amalota ke vura kosa. Ba obe ba organizore ozasa iru. Ba ne ope ba dinza ka tirura.
Amari tile tindidi ani madi Allah ma gele epikani reka chiturua. Da ana dani ropa ya ba da da zo nsirisi. Ana nkare ka ana chirika ya dale tie. Da ma vura fo zira mani aba mesu tale da ruaru yo. Tale di ba eklesia di ba tiola ke tale di suko. Ke amari bande de o ra ke sa tale pe. O kisa kwa yes sape ki amari bande ja saiko. Amala kwa amari aleko. Ajo amari kal sama biji. Da ama du ama be ayi pe ni pe rare jo madi ikwedi are da ni ko niani. Amari dan sa amari alaisu amara sa mi gwetini ko da ni ane gweka anta ja ya la fogara ba saka ti ni si. Da va apa no tole pe ya ayo. Oja di ogata mari ya tini oja ni nyantaro ni da mana oja ra di konyi di ayo baku fina o bare yi ore amari di itari bati mela la kare bati to e ba ile dia nya da be fo enkwi da be fo trapade adura ama forade karana nduru mela desa amesu ogape ki tibijo angwala awa mesura ki ta aruyo e bati e suli bati to bale aru bati ribayo dare se chiri amani da o eyo ama ba mori tana si dia di dia amesu ame ba bizona ya tsesa mari sini sulira da jele e vole bale aru e suru koro kia pena be peni koro
opiri ojo gameti kokwa eni musara mala ikavu ide iko di lonya koka bakareri lo sorry iya dikasi ibu ya itelerisi di sini gameti ojo ka opi anyiri ledi amadi ku ama anyini musara pe ojo todendra anyeyi ni ledi mbe asike oni ekwe ni ra eru musara lejodi
eya egwe madi ebede ama opi de ebede ma digare dona se oba talibai esukare kwede apagade yade tubizona sa ongoba egweda ataki ana ru na ekwika kubu ina edika usukala ka kokona fi yesu ataki pe
amadi re vodu zade odu ne zade odu a oridi ri to ja aroga oja amelole ke zona yo gwe ikwere tora
opike isoni deti sisa ba isako karemo dra dini lejotro dra liniziti amaziti de overo agriculturalist de mania ika opikalo kuiso isa majindrasi draoni azokai peruse wafukoditio ndisi andra nesi idri kendremania ya itu oda akpa.
The rainmaker today, compared to 1964, 5, 6, 7, has diminished by almost 95%. The function of the rainmaker has diminished by almost 95%. The cultural values are changing and being taken over by scientific or technological approach to explanation of cosmic events. In the next few years to come, the name rainmaking or rainmaker might even disappear.
Magbani tanaida me de akweni ana ataka pisi oba me deda ani ani kuni tanaba alosa yo kwalo alosa isu dusidenia ani nai kawadizi tungwewa piro di mari jo tari dedorsi awa dosi marune kwi mango yina ari diari suwa kawadizi tisa kungwe nanewa
tini ya dedi nyesu ojo ka tari ani ni deda ku bake yezeni adwa ngoni radisi dokuruba ko eri tani ado tani ekwira oko ojo fu akwe yini dijo kwe
để ta nhận thấy cho vua cha đã caro ta caro trapé ra bao có ra đi ra bằng cái thế đó.
In this era of science and technology, the mysterious practice of rainmaking is bound to cause conflict in a community where the majority have converted to Christianity.
I think the first thing is for the African or the sons of the soil to begin educating the Africans that Christianity is not a strange religion. Extract what is good and show the person why do you think it is good. If it is bad, show the person why do you think it is bad. Let the person get to see. 2, that similarity is very, very important. So that when you show this person that this thing is good, then you have the equivalent on the other side. That this one, for example, can be compared to ABCD. And in that way, the person will begin to understand. The church has emphasized that the faith must be lived in context of culture. It is the priest's role to define and explain when we talk of the cultural context, what are we talking about?
Christians easily associate the practice with witchcraft than as an aspect of cultural knowledge that needs to be preserved.
There are very many traditional values which are now disappearing today. And the question is, what do we do? They need to be documented.
There is a new wave of attitude towards cultural heritages in Uganda. The Ma'di royal clans and cultural groups have started gathering the scattered cultural heritages and symbols of a community so that they are not totally lost in their memory.
Ima koleri vuropiri di diarosa ama piolu kachulorisa amidora transal muria murio takusi ale ama vuandrandra coba kami konyra Johnny abira beru driati.
It is important to archive these traditional heritages for the benefit of the next generation, even if the community no longer believes in them, rather than randomly destroying them. Although not everything about traditional practices are relevant in our times, it would be unwise to throw out the baby with the bathwater.